You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
Welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today is 1/14/21. Well, lots going on out there. It never stops. And that's why you need to be watching us now more than ever, for sure. Our good friend is with us now, Gary Wagner, thegoldforecast.com. And someone who's a very savvy investor in general, and particularly in precious metals. Gary, great to have you back on, and we'd like to get your opinion where you think things are heading. Email us, kl@kerrylutz.com. We answer all. Gary, so interesting times. We saw gold going up, and then first sessions of the new year slammed $125. What is going on here?
Absolutely. First, I want to wish you personally and all of your viewers a happy and healthy new year. Interesting way to start the year. We are in unusual times. There is no doubt about that. Right now, in terms of what I'm looking at in gold, is a correction in the market, but I have different levels that if they hold, I believe that we will see a new all-time record high this year. And that's even with the market going down. Fundamentally, everything kind of puts itself in a puzzle when you consider that the Treasury spent $4 trillion last year on fiscal stimulus. And Biden came out with a lecture or a speech today saying he's going to allocate at least that much. Now, when the Fed goes in and has an accommodative monetary policy and they buy assets, they're creating not necessarily printing money, they're creating inflation, they're doing something different. But when the Treasury spends on fiscal stimulus, that increases the national debt. And it's the national debt that I'm most concerned about, because I think that is what is going to take the dollar down. And taking the dollar down will have that reciprocal bullish influence on gold.
All right. So when the Feds, they're just playing with money, printing it up, giving it to banks, it gets destroyed as quickly as it gets created. But when the Treasury actually does it, like through PPP, EIDL loans and all that, that's a whole different story. Then you're really creating money out of thin air.
You're printing the money and then loaning it out as a forgivable loan. And it is only going to come back with taxes, but that means we have to have a vibrant economy to account for that. So absolutely, you're on point.
All right. So more inflation. I think we're seeing it now. Look, copper, look how much copper has gone up. We're heading towards $4 copper. And the fact is, it's not heading up because the economy is so wonderful, because everything's running on 8 or 12 cylinders. Copper is going up, in my opinion, as well as many base metals, because of commodity price inflation.
That is correct. I think there's another component to copper, specifically China's demand for that metal, that industrial metal. And I think the two combined is why we're seeing copper really move up quickly. But the commodities as a whole have all increased in price. Absolutely, no doubt.
Yeah, and we're seeing higher food prices, right?
Yes.
Thanksgiving Day meal this year was up from the year before. Not a lot, but it was up, and it hasn't been up in years. So another indicator. Is it going to be too late for the average person when they realize that inflation really is back with a vengeance, and they missed it, and now they're really going to be hit at the supermarket, at the gas pump, and wherever they're buying stuff that they have to buy?
Well, my concern is, just as we talk about a new normal, a new paradigm that will occur once the pandemic runs its course, what is the new normal of an average American? I think at the height of the pandemic, in terms of unemployment rate, we were at 14.7%, 22 million individuals out of work. We're still at about 12 million. So the average American, there's much less of them that are actually able to support their families, pay their bills. We have the moratorium on eviction, but that's going to be paid for by the Treasury. We have all kinds of programs to protect them, the PPP Paycheck Protection Program. But the truth of the matter is the paradigm shifted when the pandemic hit and the work from home started to become the most prevalent way that people were earning their vocation. And companies learn to streamline. And they learn to do things more efficiently. And my sense is that there are many jobs that were available pre-pandemic days that will not return. So there's going to have to be a process of re-education for those that lost jobs and can't find employment in their vocation per se. And so there's going to have to be an agility in terms of how the American people recover.
And let's not forget, with AI and with technology, all these trends, I don't know if driverless cars are going to be here, Gary, next week, fully autonomous vehicles, or in 3 years. It almost doesn't matter. Same with trucks. All of these jobs, the biggest job in America, over 10 million people, being a driver of one sort or another. And that one seems headed for the ash heap of history.
Absolutely correct. It's not if, but when is the way I look at it, the autonomous vehicles. But think of it this way. One of the larger companies, didn't Uber just go public? But we've got Lyft and Uber. And the key element to their growth model is to get rid of their drivers and go all autonomous. So you've got thousands upon thousands upon thousands of drivers that depend on Uber or Lyft to provide them with a living or additional income. And they're working for a company that has a model of how quickly can we phase these people out. And so we will see some major changes. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's an inevitability to it all, Gary, and there's nothing that's going to stand in its way. We've always had this thing, though, of, hey, remember the Luddites? They basically destroyed the looms because they felt that the steam loom was going to put them out of business and they weren't going to be able to do fabric anymore. And we see what really happened was demand. But here, we're talking a whole different level of this. Just the idea that you go and you fill out a mortgage application now, before any human being even looks at it, some AI bot has analyzed it and has probably made a decision.
It's run through a complex algorithm and determined that what percentage of risk, and the people that rubber stamp these things go by the analysis of the AI. There's no doubt about that. Yes.
Hey, and stocks. I mean, look, when you read stuff on Yahoo and Google, you know that like a human being did not do these company write-ups. I'd at least like to think no human being actually writes English that way. Everything is happening. So tell us about this chart that's up on the screen here, why you need to be concerned about it.
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Lumina Gold, ticker symbol LUM on the Toronto Venture and LMGDF on the OTC, is yet another of legendary mining investor Ross Beatty's Lumina Group. It's advancing the largest primary gold deposit in Ecuador. The resource is estimated to contain 16.7 million ounces of gold and 2.2 billion pounds of copper. At just $7 US per ounce gold equivalent, it trades at an incredible 13% of its net present value. More good news is on the way with an updated PEA study expected in Q2 of 2020. It has unparalleled infrastructure. There's grid power to camp with plentiful, inexpensive hydropower available. It's close to 2 ports and is just 8 kilometers from a paved highway. Water is plentiful. It's at low elevation, and the closest community community, which is very supportive of Lumina's effort, is just a 7-kilometer ride. With all this going for it, it's likely to follow the typical Ross Beatty formula, which means big returns to shareholders. Find out more and sign up for notifications at luminagold.com. That's Lumina, Lumina gold.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
Well, the chart that we're looking at is a very, very long-term chart that is composed of candlesticks, Elliott wave, Fibonacci retracement, and Fibonacci extension to create a model that will be ongoing for the next year to a year and a half. And as you can see, the yellow lines represent various waves. The first one on the left, that long line, is what we're calling a conclusion of a wave 3. And from wave 3, it corrected exactly 50%. Not a fib number, but a standard number that is used. From there, what I did is I used basic models to calculate where the fifth and final impulse wave would go. And so in the middle of the screen, you see a bunch of horizontal lines, and they're in green, and they represent different percentages. And the one on top is a 0.618% extension of wave 3. It's considered to be the most accurate model using Elliott wave and Fibonacci to forecast where the next rally will go to.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at $2,100 to $2,200 goal, and we're looking for that to occur, I think, by the second quarter, but at least by the third quarter of 2021. And so the reason I think it's important to look at a chart like this, especially when gold is under pressure, is that all markets have ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys. They typically, except for Bitcoin, we might want to touch on that in a bit, they don't trade parabolically. They just don't go straight up. And so you have to have a way to have a sense for it, because market sentiment is a finicky animal. And the one thing that amazes me the most, that's what I'll say about gold, but what amazes me the most is the unbridled optimism in U.S. equities. I understand the premise. The premise is that at some point things will get better. We will return to post-pandemic days, or we'll go to post-pandemic days. Economies will be vibrant, and the stock market is never betting on what's happening today. They're betting on what they think will occur a year from now or a half year from now. My sense is that there is some over-optimism in terms of how quickly the pandemic will leave us, because a lot of us thought it would happen a lot sooner. The vaccine's a miracle. No doubt about that, but now we have mutations. The key is that the stock market is looking at forward time, what's going to be next year. And my question is there accuracy in the timeline that most market participants believe will return to some new sense of normal, whatever that turns out to be? And so the stock market has just been on fire. That's been putting pressure on gold. And then there's Bitcoin, $42,000 per coin. If I had told you that 10 years ago, you would have either thought I was a genius or crazy, and probably crazy, because that's how I would have felt if that was told to me. But here it is. It doubled in price. Bitcoin is an unusual asset because it's not a stock. It has no intrinsic value. It was developed as a currency, and it is the blockchain technology, of course, that is at the heart of Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency. Bitcoin has gained popularity like Xerox or Kleenex. It's become the brand name. But my question is, you've got two opposing forces. People like the anonymity of Bitcoin and that it's not traceable, which means that do you think a government in the world is going to widely open their arms and accept it? Probably not, and probably not without reservations or a backdoor or a way to figure this out. So my sense is while Bitcoin will always have its place, I believe at some point, and this is again, and not if, but when, there will be no paper currency. There won't be coins in our pockets or dollar bills in our wallets. Paper currency will no longer exist. It will all be digital. If it's digital, it's crypto. And
right.
whether it's China or the United States, but one of the superpowers will basically come out and create their own cryptocurrency that replaces their fiat currency to a digital fiat currency. But that change is coming too. So we've had some startling revolutionary inventions and building of technology over the last couple of years. Without it, we wouldn't have had a vaccine for another 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. I mean, the technique they used to create the vaccine is amazing, because in the old days, like a polio vaccine, they actually put a little piece of the virus in you and then let your body learn how to fight it off.
Right.
The vaccines they're delivering today are basically injecting you with RNA, which is a precursor to DNA, and it simply teaches your body how to deal with that virus. But you're not exposed to a virus. And the fact that they had that genome already laid out or mapped, and for the first time, all countries shared the technology. China shared, Russia shared, US shared, and it's kind of like a moonshot. It's where everybody had to come together to get the job done. And I take my hat off, because of all the bickering and problems we have with country to country, the fact that when the rubber hit the road, they all realized it was in a collective best interest of the humankind to work together. And what fascinates me is that then you had 3 pharmaceutical companies coming out with vaccines roughly at the same time. Couldn't have been done without sharing.
Yeah, very true. It was quite an accomplishment. Hopefully the efficacy, the safety, and the ability to end the pandemic will all be a coincidence of events, and we can get rid of this thing, because after having had it, it's certainly no pleasure cruise, not something you want. So when we look towards the end of the year, what are the odds of the world governments getting together and saying, all right, no more depression, we've got to move ahead. We've got people falling into poverty, millions, hundreds of millions of people losing jobs. Are they going to be able to bring the same seriousness, the same mindset that they did for vaccinations to the economy to turn things around? Or are we kind of locked in here, Gary?
I wish I could acknowledge that with the answers, of course, but I don't believe that will be the case. When it comes to a life-threatening scenario like this, that's one thing. When it comes to ownership of land or nationalism, I mean, look, China is building small islands in the sea and claiming it as their own. They want to be the world dominant superpower. It's been a plan that they've had for 10, 15 years. The Chinese think in centuries, unlike the Western cultures that think in 10 decades. And they're not going to give up what they've worked so hard to achieve. On the other hand, the last thing I want to say about the vaccine is the efficacy rate, because the data coming in suggests that by the time you get that booster shot, the efficacy rate is 95%. Polio is eradicated from the face of the earth. And their vaccine had an efficacy rate of 98 and 99%. Smallpox, same thing, 98%. You know, when you take a regular flu shot, the efficacy rate is between 40 and 60% of effectiveness. That's why the flu's here every single season. But if this vaccine truly is that effective, within a year to a year and a half, it will be history. It will be like polio. It will be something that is an annal in a history book, but that is not prevalent with us. When that occurs, countries will be countries, and they'll get back to wanting to take care of their own. They won't carry that through. I wish I could say I was wrong, and I hope I am wrong, but it doesn't seem that likely.
All right, I kind of agree with you there. I think we'll leave it there. Just tell us where we find you, how to connect with you on the web.
Absolutely. My website is thegoldforecast.com. It's all one word. I can be reached at Gary@thegoldforecast.com. And of course, you can watch thousands of our videos on our YouTube channel also. And Kerry, it's such a pleasure to be back with you. And when I heard that you were in the hospital. I kind of didn't have to wonder what possibly happened. And it's so good to hear your voice and be able to continue our rapport and our interviews, because this is scary stuff, especially when we're not, even youngsters, not youngsters, but teenagers and middle-aged adults are getting it. But someone my age, and you're a youngster still, but there's some real problematic issues that could arise.
Oh, for
sure. I'm just glad to see you back.
Well, thanks. And I appreciate the well wishes. I am here to stay. I am reinvigorated, re-energized. I'm doing it gradually. I'm like 90% of where I was, but there's actually health benefits in my situation now without getting into them. That really, the whole experience, I wouldn't have done anything differently other than the only thing going to the doctor 4 or 5 days earlier and getting antibiotics. I would have been a whole different experience. But thanks for your well wishes. Any questions or comments, guys? Email us, kl@kerrylutz.com. Sign up for the newsletter, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Gary, we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure as always. Happy New Year to all of your viewers, and let's wish them a blessed 2021, because by God, we've earned it. We had a hellacious 2020.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.